Believe it or not, this is my first ever GoPro. This is the GoPro Hero 11. Now, I have owned other cameras like the Insta360 or the DJI Pocket 2, and of course, many mirrorless cameras, and we shoot on things like iPhones. So is this GoPro gonna win me over, or will it end up on eBay? I'll let you know in this review, but first, let's check out some shots straight away. Hey there, welcome to the video. So this is the GoPro Hero 11. So let's take a look around this device and I'll tell you why I bought it this year. So the Hero 11 kind of looks the same as any other GoPro that you may have seen before, especially the 10, which looks pretty much identical. It's really just this text here on the side that has changed. But there was a couple of inside changes this year that finally made me bite the bullet and buy this camera. And those things were the 10-bit recording with higher bit rate. Now, I don't want to get too technical in this review, but basically when you go from 8-bit recording, which every other GoPro in the past had, to 10-bit recording, you go from being able to record around 16.7 million colors to over 1 billion colors. And it has a higher bit rate as well. So that means when you go out and record, not only should you get much higher quality images, but also if you film things like the sky, it will help you get rid of that sort of banding that you get sometimes in the sky. You may have seen that before if you've shot on an 8-bit camera. Also, if you are taking this underwater or you're working in lighting conditions that aren't so good, having 10-bit footage means you can color grade and color correct the footage. So it just gives you more power. So I think it's going to fit a little bit better into our workflow here. Now, one of the reasons I never really purchased a GoPro in the past is because I actually thought the footage looked a little bit naff. Now, I don't want to offend you if you own a GoPro, but I just felt it always looked like an action cam, which is fine. It's exactly what it is. But for me, with the content that we were creating, we were doing much more storytelling, much more serious content, and I just wasn't filming anything action-packed, so I didn't need an action camera. But with the new improvements to the 10-bit recording, and with improvements to things like the linear mode with horizon lock, you could actually use this as a vlogging camera. The linear mode, for example, has got some major improvements this year. And the linear mode, if you haven't seen it before, is essentially the regular shooting mode. It means you can film without that kind of fish warp effect on the side of your videos. So maybe this could replace your camera, but we'll get into that in a bit. Other improvements include the Hypersmooth 5.0 and the Auto Boost feature. Now, I really like this because in the past, if you had a GoPro, you either had to set it off, kind of medium, or really high. And if you set it really high, your footage would be kind of slightly cropped in and it would degrade the footage a little bit. But now with AI, the GoPro can detect how much stabilization you'll need. So if you are walking and vlogging, you don't need that much. So the GoPro is gonna crop out a little bit and it's gonna give you the best image. If you're on a bike and you're going down a sort of hilly mountain, it's gonna crop in and do more stabilization. So that essentially means without any work from the user, you're going to get the best quality footage or the most stable footage for whatever you're filming. So I just leave that turned on. And I've got to say, I've been hugely impressed with the stabilization coming out of this GoPro. I always knew it was good. I've watched a lot of videos in the past, but until you actually use one and you know how shaky something was, that's when you really start to appreciate just how good the stabilization is on here. It beats a gimbal in many cases. It's really that good. But the main feature that I wanted to use it for, and a big pro for the Hero 11 and the 10 before it, is that you can take this underwater now without any additional casing. So cameras like the Insta360, they are waterproof, but you do need additional casing if you really want to go snorkeling with them. With this, you can just take this straight underwater, and that's exactly what I did on holiday. I just took this little kind of floating selfie stick, I just went under the water. I didn't worry about it. I was leaving it on the sort of sand and on the seabed, swimming around, and it was absolutely fine. No problems at all. And the footage coming out of it underwater looks really good. So let's start to look at even more footage coming out of the GoPro. Now, I want to say that this review really is just my personal experience using this GoPro over the last few weeks, rather than an in-depth tech look at all the new specs and everything else. I just want to know, what is the footage coming out of this camera really like, and is it worth buying? So that's going to be my personal view. Now, when I first took the camera out of the box, I did a bit of recording in the office here, and I've got to say, I was slightly disappointed. The footage was grainy, the audio quality wasn't that good, but it was a very grey day. So I was going on holiday the very next day, and I even thought, should I even take this? Should I just send it back? Because I'm not that impressed with the footage. And I think I had this instant negative bias towards the camera before I'd even really taken it away for its job, which was going to be a travel camera. And I've got to say, when I got it out to Greece where I went on holiday, and I had this on a bike, I took it kayaking, I took it snorkeling, this is really where it comes into its own. Now, you do need good quality light. So obviously in Greece, it was a nice sunny day almost every day. And the footage coming out, in my opinion, looks fantastic. The doubts I had when I first took the camera out of the box disappeared, and I soon started to fall in love with this GoPro. Before the holiday, I'd kind of forgot what I'd bought this camera for. I didn't buy it to replace the A7S III. I got it to do action stuff with. And if you take a look at these shots here of me on a bike with my wife's family, I think this footage looks really good. I'm just hand holding the camera just like I am right now, just swinging it around on a bike on uneven surfaces. And for that, I don't think you could really improve this footage much more. Of course, a DSLR or a mirrorless camera is always going to look fantastic, but you don't want a heavy camera like that on a bike when you're just on a little day out. This, you don't have to worry about it. It's so scratch resistant, shock proof, drop proof, all the rest of it. And it's so steady. What do you think of these shots? Next, I want to quickly mention the easy mode. I know a lot of people watching this may be getting into cameras for the first time. Now, I didn't use this feature, but if you're new to cameras, there is this easy mode, and it's really designed to get the best quality audio and video for when you just want to simply press record. I think for a lot of people who don't really want to play around with the settings, this is going to be a great feature. You can just simply point and record. Of course, as I wanted to use the 10-bit and higher bit depth, I stuck to the Pro modes for all of my shots. Now, even though there is just one lens on this GoPro, it does have kind of different focal lengths, different widenesses that you can choose, if that's a word. So let's go through some of these. I recorded this on the beach so you can see the difference. So the first one is linear with horizon lock. Next, we have linear, which zooms in a bit, but it doesn't have the horizon lock. Then we have the wide. This is a 16 to 34 millimeter equivalent. Next, we start going up to the super wide, which is the super view at 16 millimeters. And then for the ultimate wide view, this is the hyper view at 12 millimeters, a super wide shot. Now, this looks fantastic, but what you will notice if you start using the super view or the hyper view is that you start getting some weird warping and bending at the side of a shot. So I'd only use this if you are trying to get that look or you're trying to film a really vast space. If you try and vlog with it, I'll do it now actually, it looks kind of weird. Okay, so I'm recording with the GoPro now on this hyper view. If we cut to this, you can see just how wide this shot is, but you can see already in the background, look when I move how much that warps. And look at my arm, I mean, bloody hell, it looks like I've got a 12-foot arm. So just be careful with this. You could vlog, and I mean, that's the other thing. If we cut to the camera there, you can see I'm literally about 3 or 4 centimeters away from the GoPro, but when I look at the GoPro screen, it still looks like a wide angle lens. I mean, I can barely focus on it, I'm that close to it. So it's crazy how wide this view is, and that's the hyper view. So let's talk about going underwater, and this is where I really fell in love with the GoPro. I took it down to the beach, no extra housing around it, not really any other accessories apart from this included, kind of like floaty selfie stick thing. So I just stuck that on the bottom like that, and I went straight into the sea. And take a look at some of this footage. I expected the footage to possibly look a little grainy or poor quality, especially being under the water. But I don't know about you, I think the image quality looks great. And due to the 10-bit recording, you can actually color grade this footage as well. So if you're in water that has a particularly blue or green color cast, you can actually get rid of that in Final Cut Pro or Premiere Pro. So one feature I haven't talked about yet is the front-facing screen on the GoPro, and I think this is actually a really good feature. If you do tend to vlog, it's good to know that you can have the GoPro any way round you want, and especially facing you if you're vlogging. I think a lot of people who vlog with an iPhone, for example, will use the front-facing camera because they can see themselves on the screen, but the quality of the front-facing camera on the iPhone isn't really that good. I always tend to use the rear camera on the iPhone if I can, and we do have some tests of this here. So this is a walking test, inbuilt microphones with the GoPro on linear 5K and the front-facing camera of the iPhone. Sorry about the audio, I bet this is pretty terrible, but what do we think? So now we are on the rear iPhone camera and we are on the GoPro 5K versus 4K. But the better iPhone rear camera, what's the quality like? Let me know. This is a walking test with the GoPro on linear mode and the iPhone on 4K. Now let's see what happens here. I'm going to tilt the cameras to the left and the GoPro should remain level. I'm going to tilt it to the right. Again, the GoPro should remain level. What happens here? Now there may be situations where you actually want the orientation to move, but this is one great thing about the GoPros, you have this horizon leveling. This is iPhone E versus the ultra wide. The lens. The iPhone, we have the 0.5 ultra wide camera versus the GoPro's 4K hyper view. So what did you think of the little comparison there between the GoPro and the iPhone 14 Pro? Let me know, because we will be doing a full video comparing them in much more detail. Now, before I get to my conclusion, I want to talk about some more little pros and little cons of the GoPro Hero 11. So let's run through them. So the first is that you can actually record in a new aspect ratio, which is 8:7, which is kind of like a square almost. And what that enables you to do is record footage once, and then you've got a perfect piece of video that you can use for Instagram stories, for example, or 16:9. So if you only have one chance to film, this is probably the aspect ratio you'll want to film in. So let's go outside and show you how that works. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to try out this 8:7 aspect ratio. Now, what that means is it's going to be a very square format for a video, but because we get the full height and width of the sensor, you should be able to crop into this footage and use it for Instagram stories or use it for 16:9. So if you just follow me around, we'll see if we can do that. Another pro that people don't talk about is the amount of focal lengths that you have. And I just love that you can get super wide on this camera. A lot of action cameras are kind of stuck to one view, other than the Insta360 where you've got the whole 360 view, but it's a lot lower quality than a camera like this. So I love that you could position this in your car, for example, and you can get the whole shot of the road in front of you, or you can make it much more narrow and make it into more of a vlogging camera. The GoPro has some really nice nighttime time-lapse settings. So a couple that I've tried so far are the star trails. So literally you just set this up on a tripod, press record, and GoPro will record this. So I did a quick 3-hour one here. It only makes a couple of second clips, but you can see it uses the rotation of the Earth to record the path of stars in the night sky. How cool is that? Secondly, you can record things like traffic. So you might have seen this on movies where you get the trails of car lights going past, and that's actually quite tricky to do. Again, with the GoPro, it's as easy as choosing the option, hitting record, and you get footage that looks like this. And then 2 more pros are the ways that you can actually use the GoPro for your recording advantage. And what I mean by that is there's a feature called hindsight. So you can set the GoPro to be recording all of the time and it will record 30 seconds in the past. So let's just say I'm out filming right now and I'm filming a car going past or some BMXs or something like that, and one flies around the corner and does a trick. A lot of people will panic, they'll press record and they might have missed the shot. If you're on the GoPro, you can press record and it will have been recording for 30 seconds previously. So you'll be going back in time and you will never miss that shot. So that's really great. The other great feature, which I think really gives you an advantage, is the ability to schedule and stop recording. So that shot there where I went out at night time, I actually set it up myself, pressed record before I went to bed. But what you can do here in the back is you can actually set a scheduled recording time. So let's just say you want to use this maybe as a security camera. Maybe you want to record a particular star at a point during the night. Or you want to do a time lapse, but you don't want it to start straight away. You can set the start recording time in the back end. And I think that's a great but overlooked feature. So they are some of the pros of the GoPro, but what are some of the cons that should maybe make you consider buying one? Well, first of all, I actually think you should consider what you're actually going to film. Like, do you really need one in the first place? I think if you're doing action stuff, if you're doing extreme sports, if you are an adventure YouTuber, then yes, I think this GoPro could be really, really good. Check out our friend Wendell Explores. He does a great YouTube channel exploring the coast of Cornwall and around the world. He recently went to Greece as well. For someone like him who's clambering around rocks and things like that, I think the GoPro could be a great option, because even though something like the iPhone 14 Pro probably delivers a little bit of a better image, you don't really want to be holding a £1,000 camera or iPhone on a selfie stick when you're clambering around rocks or you're on a mountain bike or things like that. So I think if you are doing adventure, action, sports, water sports, then yeah, I would go for this just as a security device really, so you're not breaking your main camera. But anyway, let's talk about actually some of the cons other than that of this camera. And the first one is depth of field. So depth of field, if you don't know what it is essentially a blurry background. Now, a lot of people tend to Google this, search for this, trying to achieve that blurry background look. A lot of people really like it and it looks quite cinematic. So a camera like the GoPro is not going to ever give you blurry backgrounds. And if you have the option of choosing an iPhone 14 and you don't want to get any other cameras, the iPhone 14 Pro especially will smash the GoPro on depth of field. Just look at these shots here. This is a shot taken from my iPhone 14 Pro of my wife, and it's not even with the cinematic mode turned on. The sensor's just now a lot bigger, it can let in a lot more light, and you can see you get this very natural depth of field effect, this nice natural blur in the background, which looks a lot more professional in my opinion than the GoPro. Now, of course, the iPhone 14 Pro and 13 Pros have cinematic mode as well, and that's a software feature that enables you to kind of mimic the background blur feature, and you can choose the amount of depth as well. So if that's what you're going for, if you're going for a more cinematic looking film or content that you're trying to create, the iPhone could be the better option, especially now they've added foreground blur as well on the iPhone 14 Pro. So now we're looking at depth of field, and you should be able to see on the Sony A7S III, the background is nice and blurry. On the GoPro, on the other hand, everything will be completely in focus. And the GoPro is actually a fixed focus as well. So you may sometimes find if you get too close to the GoPro, the background now looks slightly more in focus than I am and it will start to lose its focus. But if you are looking for that cinematic background, this is what the depth of field looks like on a mirrorless camera versus the GoPro. Another con is maybe you just don't need to spend this money. An iPhone 14, if you already have one or you're thinking of getting one, can have external microphones. You can add ND filters, you can add cases to make it act much more like a camera. And what I like about using an iPhone, for example, is that you can edit directly on the device or upload to Instagram or Facebook directly on the device. And there are ways around that with the GoPro app, which is, a pretty decent app, but it's easier with the iPhone 14. The iPhone 14 also has an action mode, which means if you were thinking of getting this just because you want to mount it to maybe a mountain bike, maybe you don't need to do that anymore. Just turn the action mode on the iPhone. It does crop in a little bit. It's 2.7K as opposed to the 5K of the GoPro. But if you just want the odd shot, again, maybe you don't need this. But of course, if you're doing that more often, this is going to be the better option because it can do 5.3K all the time. So I'm out filming with the iPhone, and one of the cons of the GoPro is the fixed focal length. So let me show you what you can do with the 4 focal lengths on the iPhone with this building right here. And my last con is low light performance. If you want to use your GoPro for maybe filming in a restaurant, maybe you do those type of videos, or you want to film at night, the GoPro is really not the camera for you. It really does struggle in low light. It really breaks up, even with the GoPro Hero 11. You can see this footage here of me walking around this marina here in Greece, and it just, to be honest, looks awful. I would never use this in any videos at all. And if you compare it to the low light performance of just an iPhone, which you can see here of the swimming pool and other bits and pieces we did in Greece, the iPhone actually still looks really, really good. There's barely any noise, whereas with the GoPro, there's tons of noise. So really think about what you need. The GoPro, perfect during the day, not very good at nighttime. So in conclusion, I'm just going to say I actually really do love this GoPro. I think I was definitely a little bit negative about it when I first got it. I kind of thought it was going to be a camera to replace some other cameras, and it's not really that. It's a camera that can do things that other cameras can't do. It can go super wide like no other camera can. It's rugged, so you can chuck it on the sand, you can take it in the sea, you can put it on a baseball cap, whatever you want to do, this camera can do. And because of that ruggedness, I found that I was taking it more places. I was going on bikes with it. I was taking it in the sea on a kayak or snorkeling. I wouldn't do that with an iPhone 14 Pro, and I certainly wouldn't do it with a Sony A7SIII. So it actually gives you more options when you want to film, when you want to do travel videos, for example. You're going to take this more places, and that's what I really like. It got me a bit more creative than I would usually be on holiday. I kind of get a bit lazy, especially on holiday, and I'll film a walk around the resort or whatever, and film the restaurant, and that'll be the end. This I could take and film the entire holiday, and if you've got great light, this is a fantastic camera. I think you just need to know where you are with the GoPro. Don't buy this thinking it's going to be your studio camera replacement. This is never going to replace my Sony A7S III. For instances where I'm walking around a city, I don't think I would even take it then. I think I would still use my iPhone 14 Pro. But when we're doing adventure, when we're doing travel, when we do trade shows and we go to airports, I'm going to be taking the GoPro. When I film inside my car and I want that additional camera view of filming the cars that are going down the road and the road in front, I'm going to be using the GoPro. And at about £390, it's not the cheapest camera, but it's certainly a lot cheaper than a lot of other options that you could get. So I love this camera. Let me know what you thought of the footage in the comment section below. And we're going to do a little bit more content around the GoPro, so make sure you subscribe if you want to see that.